what would be your advice to people who really are just dreaming of a really different life, maybe than the one they're living right now?
I'm going to give you an answer that's a little counterintuitive,
Hmm.
okay? Because I think what you get from a lot of folks online or speakers is this idea of the bold dream. You
Hmm.
need to have this bold dream and go out there and get it.
Hmm.
My personal experience is goals are important and we all have things we want to shoot for, but
Yeah.
it's more the incremental. Like when I worked at PepsiCo, I really loved it when we did pilots.
Mm.
Let's do a pilot, see if it works. If it works, we can do it with another division and it kind of grows that way.
Hmm.
Versus in our VUCA world, taking big swings, I just
Mm.
think it's kind of dangerous.
Taylor, thank you so much for joining today's podcast. I am really looking forward to this conversation. Just for the sake of the audience, I'll tell them how we met. So we met working together. You were leading a very large HR organization. I was leading the talent management side. And then at some point, we both made this transition to business ownership, executive coaching, and then also the transition. You'll talk about this big move you made from New York to Utah on this ranch. Um, and then I think I'll definitely have to include some pictures of this. You generously invited me and my husband and two of our best friends out to your ranch to meet your family and see the horses and the land and go on these trail rides, I guess you would call it, that we all loved, a little scared of, and loved at the same time. So yeah, just thank you for coming. I know a little bit about the transition for you and your family, but I'm looking forward to learning a lot more. So thank you for being here.
Hey, it's great to be here. And before we get started, I want to thank you because you made the transition from the corporate world to entrepreneur a few years before me. And I cannot thank you enough for whether it's templates or advice. I mean, you really paved the path for me and really helped me out a lot get started. So it was my pleasure to try to pay it back a little bit.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you definitely have. That ranch trip alone was definitely payback. That was I still have the photos on my little digital frame downstairs and watch them all the time. So but yeah, so thank you for joining. We're going to get into transitions and just lessons you've learned from your time on the land and the ranch. And before we jump into the questions, I was just looking at some stats on career transitions in the US in general. And I thought a few of these were interesting. One is that in general, in the research, they describe career transitions in two categories. One is when you're actually changing jobs, roles, organizations. And then the other one is when you're changing your orientation to a role you already have. So, like your mindset. And, I think about the terms if we hear now like quiet quitting, like I'm still in the same job, but I don't have the same mindset about this job. Um, and then post COVID with the great resignation, it's just been so much rethink around careers and transitions. And I thought a few of these stats were interesting. One, it says that transitions are stressful, they upset routines and patterns, they introduce uncertainty and discomfort. But nonetheless, about 70% of us are actively considering some kind of job role change. So even in the midst of this potential stress and uncertainty, about 70% of us are considering it. And we're just not working as long at jobs anymore. So 22% of workers 20 and older spent 1 year or less in their job in 2022. About 30% of the workforce will change jobs every 12 months. And that includes all workers. But when you just look at wage and salary earners, so those that are, if you take out like freelance and Uber drivers and contractors and like us as entrepreneurs, most people are staying at their job about 3.9 years, which is the lowest it's been in more than 20 years. So a lot of us are considering transitions. So I know you've made a big one. So I'm interested in learning everything we can about the transition you've made, the lessons you've learned, and maybe just start with telling us a little bit about your this big transition from New York to Utah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it that fascinating statistics. I would tell you, I basically have always been moving, right? When I
Hmm.
was a kid, my dad was in the military, and so I was an Air Force brat. I went to high school in Japan,
Mm.
moved every 2, 3 years for my whole life. Then I joined PepsiCo, and we moved 8 times with the company.
Wow.
Now I stayed with Pepsi for 20 years, but we moved, did international assignments and everything. And actually had all of our children in a different city. And
Ah,
so that transition it really resonates with me. But then a little over 5 years ago, we made the big transition, which was to leave corporate America. I had an opportunity to get a really nice early retirement package from PepsiCo after 20 years. I was only
wow.
49, so I still have
Oh,
a lot of years left, and then moved to do something I'd really never considered, and that's being an entrepreneur and start my own business. And we moved from just north of New York City to this little town in Utah. It's about an hour, a little over an hour south of Salt Lake, but very rural, where we are actually off grid. Because it was going to cost too much to extend the power line. So, and the little town we live in is just a couple thousand people. So, very different um, kind of environment than we're used to. And definitely, we went from being city sick slickers to I still have imposter syndrome when I'm out here. Somebody's going to find out I really don't know anything because I have no history dealing with animals or, you know, planting crops or anything like that, but it's been a fun adventure.
yeah. How long ago has that been since you all moved to Utah?
It actually, now that I think about it, it was right before COVID.
Okay.
We made the move, so it's
Mhm.
closer to 6 years. I think
Mm,
2019. We got here in 2020.
okay.
So yeah, it's been a big change. I'm always it was interesting the interaction with the local folks because they
Mm,
don't get many people. First of all, not many people from out of town move in, and then the
yeah.
New Yorker. They were
Yeah.
not sure about the New Yorker. We were always worried about the local fire department. Would they actually come out? Um,
If something happens.
I know, and we did have something happen. As I said, we're off grid, so we have a battery room in our basement that
Hmm.
exploded. No
Hmm.
one was hurt, no one was home, but sure enough, the local fire department was here to help out with the
Thank
strange
God.
New Yorkers who had moved in.
Thank God. And tell people a little. I know I've been there, but just when you say a ranch, like what elements are on your, I know you mentioned the animals, but I think you said crops too. Like what's on your ranch, just so people know
Yeah,
what it's like. Yeah.
so it's 100 acres that goes right down to a reservoir, and it was my grandparents, and then they
Mm,
passed away. We bought it really as an investment property. We never thought we are going to live on it.
mm,
We it worked out so that we were able to get the zoning. So then we had to drill a well, build the house, build a barn. Um, and it's funny, my wife's always like, "What is with this horse obsession?" Because for our
yeah.
entire marriage, I never mentioned I wanted a horse or needed a horse. I didn't even know anything about horses.
Yeah.
Now we have 15 horses.
Mm,
We have two horse trailers. I've got pack saddles, and we've been on 100 kind of um, pack trips all over the
wow.
Intermountain West. So we've gone absolutely crazy with our horses. But again, I think one of the things that has engendered me to the local folks is I ask questions. Hey,
Mm,
come,
yeah.
help me with my cow. What do I do here? And I
Yeah.
know what they're saying when they drive away, which there's
But they
no way
help.
they're going to make it. But just
But
wait, they'll sell that house eventually. But no, it's and we just put in an arena so
oh wow.
we
Hmm.
can do roping and have people kind of run in an arena. So yeah, no, it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. So you mentioned your wife and your family. What was was this a group decision? I know a lot of times people have asked me, even in my transition, like, what did the other people in your life say when you made this transition? Were they supportive? Were they not? Like, what was the feeling or thoughts from the people around you when you were thinking about making this move from New York to Utah?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll tell you, it's something that is often overlooked. Like I just think so many times when I was orchestrating moves, people moves. We don't think enough about, the family and the impact on them.
Mm,
One time, we were really having, this is a little aside, but when I was up in Canada, I was the HR person for Pepsi in Canada. and we were really having a tough time with getting people to move, and it often was the spouse and the family didn't want to move. And so we actually had a 2 day retreat with the whole family. And we
Mm,
explained the relocation process and all the and it really does help. I mean, I remember with Pepsi, we moved 8 times. And I
mm.
remember one time asking my wife, how would you compare moving, you
Mhm.
know? And she said, probably it's close to death.
Wow.
Whoa, that she was
Wow,
not joking,
really?
but she just meant
Interesting.
your whole family, your whole support structure, you have
Yeah.
to leave. She was obviously being facetious, but so for us, she hated moving. She really
Mm,
did. It was an
yeah.
incredible sacrifice because, and so the opportunity to kind of sink down roots,
Hmm.
and that's why for me, literally my entire life, I've moved every 2 or 3 years, and
Yes.
now we plan to be here for the rest of our life. So it's a different
Okay. So this
mind.
is a really different move than the ones you've had before.
Right. This
Mhm.
was kind of this is our last move, and so
Mm,
that was super helpful for her.
yeah.
Um, but she's a neighborhood girl. Like she likes having sidewalks and neighbors.
Yeah.
I remember her saying it just if I go outside and yell, no one will hear me.
Yeah.
It was kind of jarring to begin with, but she's grown to love this place. She's an incredible support, and anyway, so it's been a. But you're right. Like I'll talk to people. People will come visit from New York, and they're like, "What's this transformation?" I mean, you're the ultimate city slicker, and now you're. So it's been fun.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I love this the 2-day retreat. That's really interesting. So as you look back on it now that you've been in this place for 5, 6 years, like what's been the best part? And I'll ask about the most challenging, but what do you think has been the best parts of this transition and this kind of new life that you all are living?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say, we really love the people here. They're
Mm,
just authentic, hardworking. I wouldn't say they were super welcoming out of the get-go,
mhm.
but as you get to know them, they'll do anything for you. We've had, whether it's the explosion we had or anything like that, they're the kind of people that are, there for you. And the other thing that's interesting, Arlene, is just how you move to such a different culture. You know,
Mhm.
obviously, whether it's politically or religiously, everything is so different than where we came from. One thing I noticed just the other day, I was driving down the road and there was this huge tractor in front of us, which there often is. And so you
Yeah.
going real slow, so you pull around it. I pulled around and I looked up, and in the cab was like a 12-year-old kid. I mean, and that's what you get in this kind of rural
Yeah.
living is you give big responsibilities to young
Mhm.
kids working on the farm equipment, so it's a little bit of a throwback.
Mhm.
You see things that I think we kind of miss, and hard work is definitely part of the culture here.
Yeah, I could see that. Oh goodness. And when you said the people, I was thinking about this because I think I mentioned you, my daughter graduated college this last weekend. And so we had family in town that don't normally live here. And when we came even to this area, we only planned to be here 2 years. We've been here now 20. And people said they're like, "Man, we love your community of people. We love your friends, we love your family." Like it's something about the people. They're like, "I kind of see why you've stayed here." Um, what has helped you, do you think, build this community? Because I know I feel like that's sometimes one of the hardest parts of transition. Like your wife was saying, you kind of leave your community behind. You're in this new place and you're trying to build a new one. Like, what do you think helped you all build this connection or community of people that you have now?
I would say, kids sports is always helpful. You
Mhm.
get kids on the soccer team, and then you have them over to swim in your pool, and you get to know the parents. So that's always a great religion. This is a very
Yeah.
religious community, and so there's a lot of opportunities. I was joking with some people. This is again very rural, but I went with all these horses, and so we had a youth group come over, and
Hmm.
we took them on rides with our very safe horses. And then I was chiding some of their parents. I was like,
Mhm.
some of these kids had never been on a horse. It
Hmm.
took a New Yorker to come and introduce you guys to
To the
um,
land, yeah.
but the rodeo culture is a big thing here. When we lived in Canada, you would have the hockey goals, and
Yeah.
then in the US you have basketball. Here you see roping dummies. You see
Mm.
kids out front swinging a rope, and that's a big culture here. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting how you can well, every move you pick up different cultural elements.
yeah, and kind of lean in on those, maybe help you build community with people in that area. So what's been most challenging, would you say, about this transition so far?
Here's what I would say, and I think I'm not unique in this,
Okay.
is the lack of compartmentalization, is that the word, in
Hmm.
my life that I
Mm.
used to have when I worked in corporate America. So, you had, okay, home life, then I had a commute where I got ready for the day and
Yeah.
maybe answer some emails. Then I have work, long hours. We worked at PepsiCo together. It wasn't a 9 to 5 culture, but when you drove home, you came home,
Mhm.
and then so you have these kind of boundaries to your day.
Yeah.
In the gig economy where we're working from home,
Mhm.
where we're an entrepreneur, it's
Mhm.
almost like the freedom is jarring. Like,
Mhm.
and how do you have to be so disciplined,
Yeah.
and it's a muscle that I've really had to. I'm more of I wouldn't say super creative, but a lot of spontaneity. Let's do
Mhm.
this, let's do that. I love that, even in my work life. But here, boy, you can, and for me, like right after this, doing this great podcast, or I'll be on an international call with teams. My dad and I are finishing the barbed wire fence, right? So
Yeah.
you have these dramatic changes. And I
Uh-huh.
would just say staying organized, staying disciplined about managing your calendar, because the it's almost like we have too much freedom, if that makes sense.
No, it does completely. Yeah, so many choices. I think I've said before that in entrepreneurial world, one of the things I never thought I would say, but I often say I miss is like, just give me some objectives. Like, just tell me
Right.
what to do. Like, tell me, here are the 4 or 5 performance objectives. If I knew I could do those and knock them out, like it would make it so much easier. As your point to, with all this freedom, you have so many decisions to make on how you organize your life and your time and where you spend your energy. So yeah, no, I could see that completely.
I mean, even I'm obviously executive coach, and I know you
Mhm.
are as well. And you talk to people, and sometimes they kind of grumble at their boss.
Mhm.
And I'm like, be careful, because actually having someone to hold you accountable, that's actually a good thing.
Exactly. It's a lot easier than holding yourself accountable, actually. So, oh, I love it. So what do you think leaders can take from the lessons you've learned in the transition or just your time on the land? We'll have to put a link. Taylor has a great newsletter about lessons from the land. So I have to put that in the show notes where you can just learn about, lessons he's pulling from this work in the ranch. But what do you think are some lessons leaders can take with them based on your transition or just time on the ranch?
I mean, one of the first ones is just I've I'm not a horse expert, but I am an acute observer of horse behavior. And I think it's
Hmm.
because I'm new to it. It's kind of
Yeah.
like you ask somebody or even when you came out to visit, you
Hmm.
noticed things that I took for granted. So
Hmm.
looking at things with kind of a fresh eye. And
Hmm.
for me, this horse and rider partnership, I
Mhm.
think it's got a lot to teach us about leadership. Now, it's an analogy. Obviously, we're not writing our people or anything like that.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, for thousands of years, until just about 100 years ago, this is how we got from point A to point B. If
Mm.
you didn't have a relationship with your horse, I mean,
Yeah.
these people that say, I have a relationship with my Lamborghini, I mean, give me a break. You
Right.
shouldn't be. But you got to have a relationship with your horse.
Hmm.
And I think there are a lot of lessons on, first of all, from the horse's perspective and looking at how they deal with whether it's conflict or feeling unsafe. And then
Mhm.
also from a rider's perspective, how do you provide clear direction?
Mm,
I tell people I can tell what kind of leader you are by watching you ride a horse for 1 minute.
mm,
And that is, you just watch how they hold the reins. People
mhm.
that are kind of controlling folks, they really pull back, and
Yeah,
we call it, they don't give the horse its head. They're really, and then you have people that basically they don't even hold the reins. Wherever
yeah,
the horse goes, that's what. I actually think that was more your style, Arlene.
yeah, that you got me 100%. If there's anything that's gonna get me in trouble in leadership, it's not giving enough direction. Like
Right,
I like to
right.
hire great people and be like, "Go be amazing." They're like, "Well, can you tell me something more than that?" So you're exactly right, actually. Yes.
But that self-awareness to kind of
Yeah.
know what your natural tendency is,
Mhm.
and do we need to provide a little bit more direction, or do we need to
Yeah.
give a little bit more um you know freedom, autonomy to
Mhm.
our folks? um,
Mhm.
is so like you say, I mean, I'm my kids get frustrated with me because they're always like, oh, is this going to be another leadership lesson on the land? Because I'll notice something. I actually have one going out today that I've never written one about our dog. We have a ranch dog,
Uh-huh.
and she just had 8 puppies.
Mm.
And so I'm watching her, and imagine how hectic it is to deal
Yeah.
with 8 puppies,
Mhm.
and she's doing something that I think is a really good coping behavior. So I won't tell you what it is, but
Oh,
that's
tell me.
that's the one I
You
wrote.
have to tell me now.
Well, she started doing this thing where literally every hour for 5 minutes she'll
Mhm.
get out of the little area where the horse, and she'll go sit by herself.
Mm.
And then after 5 minutes, she'll come back in. And of course, all the puppies they can't see, and they're going. And I'm just like, that idea of unplugging, taking a
Mhm.
little break.
Yeah.
There's a lot of neuroscience around this. We move to a
Mhm.
safer place in our brain.
Mhm.
Um, do we do that enough? Be diligent about, I got to take my break. And
Mhm.
something, instinctively about that dog, she knows she's got to take her break,
Wow.
or she'll
Yeah.
snap at one of those puppies.
That sounds very real life, actually. That's so interesting. Yeah, there's something too about this just and maybe it's the newness, but when I think about your lessons from the land, this willingness to observe life
Right.
and reflect on what you see around you and what lessons you can take from even just the natural elements of life, the weather, the plants, the animals in our life, like just being willing to observe and reflect. I think like I felt like this when I was on your ranch, something about being outdoors.
Yeah.
There's just something in that, there's research that says that too, how it just reduces our stress and kind of slows you down. It makes it a little easier to just be in that observant, reflective mode where I feel like day to day, it's really easy not to be that,
Right.
not to be in that space. So,
Yeah. It's almost like we have great cell coverage on our house
mhm,
here at our ranch, but there's some value in unplugging from this, right?
yeah.
Because
Hmm.
what happens is, I love John Dewey's quote where he says, we don't learn from experience,
Yeah.
we learn from reflecting on experience.
Hmm.
And this kind of like, we'll have an experience and then we'll look at our phone, as opposed to step back. We really try to do with these we do these leadership retreats now
Hmm.
with the teams that come out, and we're very intentional about a
Hmm.
reflection. So we have the
Yeah.
experience in the corral, and then we'll go up to the barn loft and say, okay,
Mm.
what did you get out of that?
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you don't take time to really think through what was the lesson that I could get out of that. And
Yeah.
some cultures are very good about this, whether
Hmm.
it's a nightly, sometimes prayer can do this, where you kind of reflect on the day, what
Hmm.
worked, what didn't work. And as you know, this is one of the great things about executive coaching, is that
Yeah.
it's a time in your life where you're going to get that with your coach, where
Mhm.
there's kind of a return, and how did that interaction go? We're going to debrief it, and that's
Mhm.
where real learning takes place, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. So let me ask you this. I know a lot of people dream about just having a totally different life. I think sometimes I said I've heard more than once someone say, especially if they're in the thick of things and a really tough job or tough environment, they just were like, I just want to sell it all and go get a ranch or sell it all, go be a sheep farmer or something, just kind of dream of, or I want to move to South America or, just kind of dream of this very different life. What would be your advice to someone, and you're one of the few people, Taylor, who's kind of done that. Um, what would be your advice to people who really are just dreaming of a really different life, maybe than the one they're living right now?
I'm going to give you an answer that's a little counterintuitive.
Hmm.
Okay. Because I think what you get from a lot of folks online or speakers is this idea of the bold dream. You
Hmm.
need to have this bold dream and go out there and get it.
Hmm.
My personal experience is goals are important and we all have things we want to shoot for,
Yeah.
but it's more the incremental. Like when I worked at PepsiCo, I really loved it when we did pilots.
Mm.
Let's do a pilot, see if it works. If it works, we can do it with another division and it kind of grows that way.
Hmm.
Versus in our VUCA world, taking big swings, I just
Mm.
think it's kind of dangerous. And
Mm.
so for us, obviously it was a big swing to come out here.
Mm.
But, I've done things with my business and I said, oh, I like that. Let's do more of that. And
Hmm.
other things, I'll try it and it's, yeah, I'm not doing that again. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes people will, so for example, they'll look at this and say, oh, I see. You decided you would create a coaching and consulting practice with horses and you went out and bought all the horses. No, I have 9 children and they all wanted to ride horses. And so we got really safe horses and we bought a couple and the kids were like, oh, I want to go. And then pretty soon you say, these are super safe horses. We could have, anyway. So it's this idea, it's more of an incremental where,
Hmm.
as opposed to, I think, like I say, taking wild swings at things, because then
Yeah.
what happens is people, once they get it, they're like, you know, there are a lot of people I think that would really struggle with the rural lifestyle.
Hmm.
I mean, things go at a very slow pace.
Yeah.
You come from New York or something, you're like, come on, let's pick up the pace here. But anyway,
Yeah.
that does that help at all?
That helps a lot actually, and it's reflective of an experience I had. We really thought we were going to retire in South Carolina and on the coast where near my husband's family lives, and I mean, I just loved it. I was like, "Oh, this is where I want to be." And I was there in the summer most of the time, which is like when you're on the beach, and I happened to go there one winter and we went and spent a couple weeks around the holidays and around Christmas, and I was like, "Oh no, never." There's nothing like once the summer fun is over, the place
Right.
shuts down for like 6, 7 months until the summer comes back. And I was like, oh my God, no, I could never do this. Like to your point, like this piloting idea of like take a step, see if it makes sense. Like, is it what you thought it is? Like, I think that's a really good idea because I think had we made that move without me seeing that, I would have been really disappointed when when the fall and winter came along. So I think that's a great idea.
When
Yeah.
you said that, it made me think, I wonder how many times there's probably a code for this. I don't know what it is, of people who thought they wanted to live in Arizona and
Yeah.
then they went through a summer and they moved,
And they were like, you know what? No, I don't actually. Exactly.
No.
So I think I love the idea of the pilot. And I think that feels more doable. Sometimes we don't, I think, move towards things we're thinking about because it feels too big and like you're saying, too risky, but maybe a step, staying somewhere for a week or visiting, talking with people who are doing it, like a step feels more, it also just feels more doable,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
think the other element that sometimes can get in our way today
Hmm.
is the idea of always kind of comparing ourselves to others, right?
Hmm.
Oh, that's why I'm not a Facebook person because I don't want to be the person, oh, look, he's doing another thing on some great, because what happens is then you're like, oh, it's never enough,
Hmm.
as opposed to just what makes you happy and focus on that.
Yeah.
There's a parable that Christ has around the parable of the laborers,
Hmm.
where if you'll remember, a guy is paying laborers and he's giving them a fair wage,
Yeah.
and they're happy to get it.
Yeah.
But it's when he starts to pay people the same wage that come at the end the other people are like, wait a second, this is unfair. And it's
Yes.
like, it's not unfair. You're getting what you were told to get, but it's
Right.
comparison to others,
Hmm.
right? So like, be careful about, getting on or watching the rich and famous or on YouTube. I want their life because
Hmm.
that's not going to lead to happiness. You got to focus on really what's going to make
Yeah.
you happy.
Welcome to Anelra. Have you ever thought about unlocking the full potential of yourself or the leaders in your organization? Imagine the impact of executive coaching. Ready to transform your leadership impact? Visit us at www.anelratalent.com. Anelra, coaching solutions that work. Any final thoughts? I want to ask you a last question around how you just personally work well and live well, but any final thoughts for people either in considering a career transition or kind of in your lessons you learned from the land? Just any final thought you'd leave with everybody?
Well, I guess I would maybe lead with this idea, or because you touched on it when you asked about how did we find friends here, um, and it's this idea of the herd with horses
Mm,
and what we can learn about the importance of having people around us, either our friends as we move or making new friends. And it's fascinating to watch horses because they're a herd animal. They do everything as a group. There's usually a lead mare, and if they're separated from the herd, there's going to be a problem, right?
mm,
They do not feel safe, and I was once one of our safer horses broke several of my ribs by
mm,
just running over the top of me because I had separated him from the herd and he wanted to get back to
mm.
the herd.
Yeah.
But I think, we all know about the loneliness epidemic
Mhm,
and things. So I think that as leaders, what can we do to help people come together and there's safety in the
mm,
herd. And as we move and make transitions, making sure we're investing the time to reach out. Hopefully,
mm,
people on the other side are welcoming, because you
mhm.
need a herd around you.
Yeah.
People don't do well. I think we all saw this during COVID, where
Mhm,
the isolation that caused was not
yeah.
good for people. So I don't know
Mm.
if that helps.
I love it. Yes, find your herd for sure. Because yeah, life and leadership are not meant to be done alone. I mean, I think
Yeah.
about the relationship we have and just the relationship we have with other people, and even this idea that I might be back at the ranch later this year with another part of our group. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're definitely not meant to be done alone. It's just so much more joyful and even less stressful, I think, when you can do it together.
And
Yeah.
they can help you through,
Hmm.
when we invariably are going to have. Can I tell you one last quick
Yeah, please.
story? So we had our first foal that was born on the ranch.
Mm,
And I named the company after my horse, Sage,
okay.
and she had a colt. And so it was an exciting time. We didn't know what we were doing. And sure enough, 4 o'clock in the morning, my son
Mm,
said, she's having it. So we run out to the corral and we watch this dramatic scene. And where all the
mm,
kids are in their pajamas and everything like that.
yeah.
So then, after it was over, we noticed that all the other horses were standing around the outside of the corral
Mm,
looking at this scene.
mm.
And then the next day, for the entire day, that those other 12 horses just stood there watching the mother and the foal.
Wow.
And then when the mother and foal were reintroduced to the herd, they couldn't have been more kind of solicitous and careful. Like they were all there for this new baby. And I'm just like, man, what a great lesson for us that
Yeah.
we can all kind of pull together when there's a big change or something like that.
Hmm.
But it's one of my favorite pictures that I have here of all these horses just focused on
Yeah.
helping the mother and the foal. So
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. Yeah, there's something about just being present, to
yeah,
to witness someone else's big moment, or there's definitely something to just the presence part. I could even think back to my daughter's graduation, just, people being there just to witness it that's somehow special, it just, I don't know. It's deep and it's special. So,
Yep.
yeah. So, okay, so I'm gonna ask you my last question, which is how do you personally work well and live well? So, what are your one, two best tips for just creating a meaningful life, whether that's work or, all the things you do, all the other things you do?
Well, I talked about this thing that I'm trying to do, which is be more disciplined,
Mm,
because I love this idea of work well and live well. I mean, they are linked.
mm,
And, the stories of people just going and relaxing on a beach with a martini for the rest of their life, they're not going to be happy. You got
no.
to have something that you're working on. And so, one of the great coaches that I know is, an example to us all is Marshall Goldsmith. And I read
Mm,
in one of his books that he has someone call him every day on the 30 things that he wants that he's supposed to do. So he
mm,
reports back with this,
wow.
pays this person to call him. And now I don't do that, but I have my little list of
Mm,
the 20 things that I'm going to do, and many of them are related to my family, positive interactions with my family. One
mm,
of them is to try to do better about not swearing. And
mm.
there's an inverse relationship between that one and dealing with livestock. That, if I can avoid the livestock. But anyway, it's this idea of back to what we talked about, is
Yeah.
I actually will check off my 20 things through the day and then reflect on it at the end of the day to say, how many did I get? I circle, today was a 17 day. That was great. Today was a 3 day. It wasn't
Yeah.
good. And again, they're not just, did I exercise, although that's on there, but it's about relationships, and it's obviously about building my business. But for me, that structure has
Mhm,
really helped me feel a little bit more grounded
mhm.
than living where it's kind of like I can do whatever I want today. There's no real
Yeah.
kind of roadmap. So it's a
Mm.
simple thing, but it's something I try to do. Um, my kids will sometimes again say, "Did you do that to get your check, Dad?" But
Maybe.
maybe
Exactly.
at least I did it.
Exactly, at least I did it. Do you okay, now I'm really interested, and this is an idea, mechanically, I'm just thinking about it. Do you have the same list of 20 for every day, or every day do you create your list of 20?
No, I have the same list. I
Okay,
printed out at the first of the year on
okay,
card stock, and
yeah,
so now on the flip side, I'll make my to-do list for the day.
okay,
Go get some hay or whatever it is.
yeah.
But the
Not many
actual,
not many executive coaches probably have "go get some hay" on their to-do
yeah,
list.
that's right.
Oh, the way I love that. That's really intentional. And I like that it's something you can carry with you, so you can, because I have a list, some lists I use, but I like this idea of something that you can, it's small enough to carry with you, so you can reflect on it throughout the day, or it's just kind of always with you. Yeah, that's
I mean,
very,
it works for me. I'm sure there's probably an app you could create, or there's
yeah.
things out there. But yeah, it's we live in such an interesting time where
Mm,
it's kind of like, again, back to this idea, I've said it a couple of times, it's almost like we have a little too much freedom. Like,
mhm,
and this is true with horses, they need a job to do. They
mhm,
need a place they're going. When
mhm.
when we bring groups and they turn toward home and see the barn, they
Yeah.
settle in and everybody knows where they're going. If you just say, I'll just go out in the field and wander around, it's probably not going to end well.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of the way it is in our life.
Yeah. I love that intentionality. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining today's podcast. We're going to put all of the information so people connect with you in the show notes. You all can get to know Taylor even more. He also coaches with our business. Just an amazing coach and also just an amazing person. I appreciate you sharing and giving your insights and tips. And yeah, we'll see you all next time on Work Well, Live Well. Thanks for listening to the Work Well, Live Well podcast. If you're ready to grow as a leader or as an organization, head to enelratalent.com. That's ENELRA talent.com to learn how we can support you. Like what you heard? Follow or review the show so you don't miss what's next.